Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. This time, we're mixing science and danger with natural toxins.
Yeah, that's right. They're more than just deadly. These natural substances give us kind of a look into how our bodies work, all those complicated systems.
It's wild to think about. We've got 5 astonishing facts about these toxins to explore. Think of them like ingredients in a chemist's cocktail.
A dangerous cocktail, that is. But if it's mixed just right.
Right. It can lead to incredible discoveries, even medical breakthroughs, perhaps.
Exactly.
Let's start with something everybody's heard of, I'm sure. Botulinum toxin, the culprit behind botulism.
Deadly food poisoning, yeah.
But it can also smooth wrinkles as Botox. It's strange to think about, right?
It is remarkable how the same molecule can cause paralysis or get injected into faces. It all comes down to the dose.
And how it's applied, too.
Botulinum toxin is produced by a bacterium called Clostridium botulinum.
That's a mouthful.
It is. What it does is block nerve signals, preventing muscles from contracting.
So on one hand, you have paralysis, a serious medical condition. On the other, people are getting it injected to, well, look younger.
It really highlights the importance of understanding the science behind these toxins, how they work at the molecular level.
Speaking of surprising things we might find in, well, unexpected places.
Yeah, like our food. Have you ever heard about the FDA's action levels?
Action levels.
It's a little unsettling, but they allow certain amounts of, say, insect fragments or rodent hairs in our food.
You're kidding. Seriously.
It's because achieving absolute purity is practically impossible.
I guess that makes sense.
They've determined that these tiny bits are unavoidable, and at such low levels, there's no health risk.
So there's a good chance my last chocolate bar had a little something extra in it.
Maybe. But don't worry, it's not harmful. It's just a little reminder, that nature is complex. Even in things we think are safe, there are these tiny traces of, well, the unexpected.
Okay, let's move on to a toxin with a much more, shall we say, dramatic reputation, ricin.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Ricin. A tiny amount from those castor beans can be lethal. It's a staple of spy movies, right?
Right. No spy thriller is complete without it.
Ricin shuts down the machinery inside cells, essentially stopping protein synthesis. And there's no antidote.
Which makes it a potential bioweapon.
Sadly, yes. But scientists are also exploring ricin for cancer therapies, using that cell-killing ability to target cancer cells specifically.
It's another example of how a dangerous toxin could have life-saving applications. Amazing.
It is a fascinating duality. Like strychnine, which we'll talk about next, it's known for causing those agonizing muscle convulsions.
It has a dark history, too. Used in rat poison and even as a performance enhancer, with terrible consequences, of course.
Strychnine comes from the seeds of the Strychnos nixavomica tree. What it does is it blocks glycine, which is a neurotransmitter. It kind of takes the brakes off motor neurons.
Leading to those muscle convulsions. It sounds horrific.
It is, but scientists actually use strychnine in controlled settings to study nerve function and muscle control.
So by seeing how it disrupts things, they learn how things work normally.
Precisely. It's a valuable tool in research. Now, for something completely different, have you heard of conotoxins?
Conotoxins.
They're found in the venom of cone snails, those beautiful but potentially deadly creatures you might see in tropical waters.
Wow. I always thought of cone snails as slow and harmless. They pack a punch.
They are masters of disguise. Their venom is a complex mix of peptides, including conotoxins. These target ion channels in the body.
Ion channels?
Those channels control the flow of ions like sodium and potassium, crucial for nerves and muscles to work right.
So these conotoxins, they essentially hijack the nervous system.
In a way, yes. And what's really interesting is their specificity. Scientists are studying them for new pain medications and treatments for neurological disorders like epilepsy and Parkinson's disease.
It's like they're molecular scalpels, targeting specific parts of the nervous system, offering new possibilities for treating these complex conditions.
Exactly. And finally, for this part of our deep dive, let's talk about tetrodotoxin. It's found in pufferfish and also in blue-ringed octopuses and even some salamanders. It's what makes fugu, that Japanese delicacy, so risky.
Right. I've heard about that. Chefs have to be specially trained to remove the toxic parts.
Even a tiny mistake, and it can be fatal.
So how does it work?
Tetrodotoxin blocks sodium channels, basically shutting down nerve signals, leading to paralysis. But it's a valuable tool for scientists who are studying nerve function and how we feel pain.
So it's both a culinary dare and a scientific treasure trove.
Precisely. Tetrodotoxin shows us how nature's creations can be both a threat and a source of knowledge.
From bacteria to beans to trees, snails, and now pufferfish, all sources of these amazing toxins.
And each one tells us something new about how our bodies work.
This is just the beginning of our journey into the world of natural toxins.
There's so much more to explore. It's amazing, right, how we learn from these toxins, like dendrotoxin, for example.
Dendrotoxin.
Yeah, it's found in mamba snake venom, and it specifically blocks potassium channels in nerve cells.
Oh, right, potassium channels. Those are important for nerve signals too, aren't they?
Absolutely. They regulate the electrical activity of nerve cells. Dendrotoxin disrupts that whole process, messes with the nerve impulses.
So another way to kind of hijack the nervous system, but this time it's potassium, not sodium.
Exactly. That's what makes dendrotoxin so useful for neuroscientists. They can study its effects and learn more about how the brain works, that delicate balance of ions.
It's incredible, really. Snake venom helping us understand the brain. Talk about a paradox.
Speaking of paradoxes, let's talk about bungarotoxin.
Bungarotoxin. That sounds familiar. Isn't that from a snake too?
Yes, certain types of crate snakes, bungarotoxin has a very specific way of working. It binds to acetylcholine receptors.
Acetylcholine receptors.
They're at the connection points between nerve cells and muscle fibers, the neuromuscular junctions.
Right. I remember that. So what does bungarotoxin do?
Well, acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter. It's released at those junctions to make muscles contract. Bungarotoxin blocks that signal.
Leading to paralysis.
Exactly. It's like cutting the communication lines between brain and muscles.
Right.
What's really useful for scientists is that bungarotoxin binds so tightly, it's practically irreversible.
Wow.
They use it to map those receptors, see where they are and how they work.
So it's like a highlighter, showing scientists those receptors.
Exactly. And that helps us understand how our nervous system controls movement. It even helps in developing treatments for conditions like myasthenia gravis.
Where the communication between nerves and muscles is messed up.
Right. So we see, again, these toxins, dangerous as they are, they're also incredible tools for scientific discovery.
It's really quite amazing. Okay, what's next?
Let's talk about chlorotoxin.
Chlorotoxin. Okay, haven't heard of that one. What is it? Where's it from?
This one's from the venom of deathstalker scorpions. And despite the scary name, it's showing promise in a surprising area, cancer treatment.
Seriously?
Oh,
Scorpion venom for cancer. How does that even work?
it's pretty fascinating. Chlorotoxin has a thing for certain chloride channels, and these channels happen to be overexpressed in some cancer cells.
Overexpressed, meaning there's more of them.
Exactly, particularly in gliomas, which are brain and spinal cord tumors. So the chlorotoxin can be used to deliver drugs or imaging agents right to the tumor.
Like a guided missile, zeroing in on those cancer cells.
That's a great way to put it, and because it's targeted, it minimizes the damage to healthy tissue.
It's another amazing example of how nature can provide such unexpected solutions to these really tough medical problems.
Absolutely. Chlorotoxin is just one of many toxins being researched for cancer therapy. Nature, over millions of years, has evolved these incredibly sophisticated ways to target cells and disrupt biological processes.
And we're just beginning to learn how to use that for good.
Exactly.
That's absolutely mind-blowing. What else have we got on the list today?
Well, let's talk about cobra venom cardiotoxins.
Cobra venom. That sounds intense. I bet it targets the heart, right?
You got it.
Yeah.
Cobra venom cardiotoxins mainly affect the heart. They're a group of proteins that disrupt the function of ion channels in heart muscle cells.
So that's got to mess with the heart's rhythm.
Right. It does. Causes arrhythmias and could even lead to cardiac arrest.
It sounds like they throw the heart's electrical system into chaos.
That's one way to put it. But researchers have been using these toxins to study how those ion channels work in the heart. It's helping them understand heart disease better and hopefully develop new treatments.
It's like figuring out how to fix a car by first understanding how to break it.
Interesting analogy. But in this case, it's more like learning how to heal the heart by understanding how a toxin disrupts it.
It's all just so incredible. Nature is constantly surprising us, both with its dangers and its potential for good.
Absolutely. And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore in the world of toxins.
I'm ready for the next one. What else do you have for us?
Let's talk about paleotoxin.
Paleotoxin. Okay, that one sounds pretty ominous.
Yeah.
What is it? Where does it come from?
This one's a really complex molecule. It's made by some marine organisms, tiny algae called dinoflagellates. It's one of the most potent marine toxins we know of, and its effects are, well, pretty dramatic.
Dramatic. How?
Paleotoxin basically messes up ion transport in cells. It binds to the sodium-potassium pumps, the ones that keep the balance of ions inside and outside the cell. throws the whole system off.
So it really throws the whole cellular system into chaos.
You could say that. It disrupts that delicate balance that cells need to function, and the effects can be fatal.
Wow. It sounds incredibly dangerous.
It is. But here's the paradox. Even though it's so toxic, paleotoxin is helping scientists study how ions are transported and how cells signal to each other.
So even something as potent as paleotoxin can teach us something.
Exactly. And that's what's so amazing about studying toxins. They act like these powerful probes, allowing us to see what happens when things go wrong, which helps us understand how things work normally.
It's like looking at the dark side of nature to understand the light.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And by exploring both the light and the dark, we make these remarkable discoveries about the world and ourselves.
We've covered a lot of ground today. Bacteria, beans, trees, snails, scorpions, snakes, and now marine algae. All these different sources for these potent toxins.
It's a testament to the diversity of nature's chemistry, isn't it?
It is. And each one has taught us something valuable about how life works.
And it reminds us that it's important to study toxins, not just to understand the dangers, but to see if we can use them for good.
I can't wait to see what other surprises nature has in store for us.
Well, let's delve into another fascinating group of toxins that have captivated scientists for decades, marine and fungal toxins.
Marine and fungal toxins. Now that sounds like a whole new level of danger.
You're not wrong. The oceans and forests are teeming with organisms that have evolved potent toxins for defense or predation, and some of these can be incredibly harmful to humans.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are some of the most notable ones?
Let's start with ciguatoxin.
Ciguatoxin, that rings a bell. Isn't that the one you get from eating certain types of fish?
You're right. Ciguatoxin is a neurotoxin produced by dinoflagellates, those microscopic algae we talked about earlier. They're often found in tropical and subtropical waters and can accumulate in the food chain, eventually ending up in fish that humans consume.
So it's like a hidden danger lurking in seafood.
Exactly. And what makes ciguatoxin so insidious is that it's heat stable and odorless, so you can't tell if a fish is contaminated just by looking at it or smelling it.
That sounds pretty scary.
It can be. Ciguatera fish poisoning, caused by consuming fish contaminated with ciguatoxin, can cause a variety of symptoms, from gastrointestinal distress to neurological problems like tingling sensations, muscle weakness, and even paralysis.
So it's a serious health concern, especially for people who eat a lot of seafood.
Absolutely. And there's no specific antidote for ciguatera poisoning, so treatment is mainly focused on managing the symptoms.
It's a good reminder to be cautious about the seafood we eat.
Indeed. Now let's move on to another marine toxin that's notorious for its potency, saxitoxin.
Saxitoxin. That one sounds equally menacing. What kind of organism produces this toxin?
Saxitoxin is another neurotoxin produced by dinoflagellates. But unlike ciguatoxin, which accumulates in the food chain, saxitoxin is the culprit behind paralytic shellfish poisoning, or PSP.
Paralytic shellfish poisoning. That sounds pretty self-explanatory and not in a good way.
You're right. Saxitoxin can accumulate in shellfish like clams, mussels, and oysters that feed on the dinoflagellates. When humans eat these contaminated shellfish, they can experience a rapid onset of symptoms including tingling sensations, numbness, muscle weakness, and paralysis.
So it's like ciguatera poisoning, but with shellfish instead of finfish.
The symptoms are similar, but saxitoxin works differently. It blocks sodium channels, which are essential for nerve impulses. This disrupts the signals from the brain to the muscles, leading to that characteristic paralysis.
It's another example of how these toxins target the nervous system, but in different ways.
Exactly. And like ciguatoxin, there's no specific antidote for saxitoxin poisoning, so treatment is primarily supportive.
It seems like these marine toxins are a serious threat to human health.
They can be, but it's important to remember that not all dinoflagellates produce toxins, and not all seafood is contaminated. There are monitoring programs in place to help ensure the safety of seafood, but it's always good to be aware of the risks.
Okay, I'm ready to move on to the fungal toxins. What do we have in that category?
Let's start with amatoxins.
Amatoxins. Those don't sound familiar. What's the source of these toxins?
Amatoxins are produced by certain types of mushrooms, most notably the death cap mushroom, Amanita phalloides. These mushrooms are responsible for most fatal mushroom poisonings worldwide.
Wow, that sounds incredibly dangerous.
It is. Amatoxins are highly toxic, and even a small amount can be lethal. They target the liver and kidneys, causing severe damage that can lead to organ failure.
So these are not your average Magix mushrooms?
Definitely not. Amatoxins work completely differently. They inhibit RNA polymerase II, an enzyme that's essential for making proteins.
So they essentially stop the cell from making proteins.
Exactly. And because protein synthesis is vital for cell function, amatoxins can cause widespread damage throughout the body.
It's a stark reminder that nature can be beautiful and deadly at the same time.
Indeed. And the symptoms of amatoxin poisoning can be delayed, which makes it even more dangerous. People might not experience any ill effects for several hours after eating the mushrooms, but by then, the toxins are already doing their damage.
So it's crucial to be absolutely certain of the identity of any wild mushroom before you even think about eating it.
Absolutely. Never eat a wild mushroom unless you are 100% sure of its identification. And even then, always cook mushrooms thoroughly before eating them.
Okay, and taking notes. What's the next fungal toxin on our list?
Let's talk about aflatoxins.
Aflatoxins. Those sound a bit more familiar. Aren't those associated with mold?
You're right. Aflatoxins are a group of toxins produced by certain molds, primarily Aspergillus flavus and Aspergillus parasiticus. These molds can contaminate various crops, including corn, peanuts, cottonseed, and tree nuts.
So it's like a hidden threat in our food supply.
Exactly. And what makes aflatoxins so dangerous is that they're potent carcinogens. Long-term exposure to aflatoxins has been linked to an increased risk of liver cancer.
So it's not just about acute poisoning, but also about the long-term health effect.
Precisely. And aflatoxin contamination is a major concern in many parts of the world, particularly in developing countries where food storage conditions may not be ideal.
It's a reminder that food safety is a global issue.
Absolutely. And there are ongoing efforts to reduce aflatoxin contamination in the food supply through proper storage and handling practices, as well as by developing resistant crop varieties.
It's encouraging to know that there are ways to mitigate this threat.
Indeed. Now, let's move on to another fungal toxin that's gained notoriety for its potency, abrin.
Abrin, that one sounds particularly dangerous. What's the source of this toxin?
Abrin is a highly toxic protein found in the seeds of the rosary pea, Abrus precatorius. These seeds are often used in jewelry and crafts, but they can be lethal if ingested.
So it's like a hidden danger lurking in seemingly harmless objects?
Exactly. And what makes abrin so potent is that it's a ribosome inactivating protein, or RIP.
Ribosome inactivating protein. What does that mean?
Ribosomes are the cellular machinery responsible for protein synthesis. Abrin essentially sabotages this process, preventing cells from making the proteins they need to function.
So it's like shutting down the cell's entire operating system.
A very apt analogy. And even a tiny amount of abrin can be lethal. In fact, it's considered one of the most toxic naturally occurring substances known.
It's a sobering reminder that nature's beauty can often conceal deadly secrets.
Absolutely. And it underscores the importance of being aware of the potential dangers lurking in the natural world.
Okay, I'm ready for the next one. What other toxins are on our list?
Let's talk about a group of toxins that have been used in traditional medicine for centuries, but also have a dark side: botanical toxins.
Botanical toxins. That sounds like a bit of a contradiction. How can something used in medicine also be toxic?
It all comes down to dosage and the specific compounds involved. Many plants contain bioactive compounds that can have both beneficial and harmful effects. In small doses, these compounds may have medicinal properties, but in larger doses, they can be toxic.
So it's like a delicate balance between healing and harm.
Precisely. And throughout history, humans have learned to harness the power of these botanical toxins for both good and ill.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What are some examples of these botanical toxins?
Let's start with artemisinin.
Artemisinin. That one sounds familiar.
Right.
Isn't it used to treat malaria?
You're right. Artemisinin is a potent anti-malarial drug derived from the sweet wormwood plant, Artemisia annua. It's been used in traditional Chinese medicine for centuries to treat fevers and was rediscovered in the 1970s as an effective treatment for malaria.
So it's a classic example of how traditional knowledge can lead to modern medical breakthroughs.
Absolutely. And artemisinin has become a cornerstone of malaria treatment worldwide, saving countless lives.
It's an inspiring story of how nature can provide solutions to some of our most pressing health challenges.
Indeed. But even artemisinin, despite its life-saving properties, can have toxic effects in high doses. It can cause liver damage and other side effects if not used carefully.
So even a miracle drug can have a dark side.
It's a reminder that every medicine is also a poison, and it's all about finding the right balance.
Okay, I'm ready for the next one. What else is on our list of botanical toxins?
Let's talk about scopolamine.
Scopolamine. That one sounds a bit more sinister. What's the story behind this toxin?
Scopolamine is a terpene alkaloid found in various plants, including nightshade, henbane, and jimsonweed. It's been used for centuries in traditional medicine for its anticholinergic effects, but it also has a dark history as a truth serum and a date rape drug.
Wow, that's a pretty disturbing combination of uses.
Indeed. Scopolamine's anticholinergic effects can cause a range of symptoms, including drowsiness, confusion, hallucinations, and memory loss. In low doses, these effects can be beneficial for treating motion sickness and postoperative nausea, but in higher doses, they can be dangerous and even life-threatening.
So it's another example of how a substance can be both a medicine and a poison.
Exactly. And scopolamine's use as a truth serum and a date rape drug highlights its ability to impair memory and judgment, making individuals more susceptible to suggestion and manipulation.
It's a sobering reminder that even natural substances can be used for nefarious purposes.
Absolutely. And it underscores the importance of being aware of the potential dangers of these botanical toxins.
Okay, I'm ready for the next one. What other botanical toxins should we know about?
Let's talk about digitoxin.
Digitoxin. That one sounds vaguely familiar. Isn't it related to heart function?
You're right. Digitoxin is a cardiac glycoside derived from the foxglove plant, Digitalis purpurea. It's been used for centuries to treat heart failure, but it also has a narrow therapeutic index, meaning that the difference between a therapeutic dose and a toxic dose is small.
So it's another case of a substance that can be both beneficial and harmful.
Exactly. Digitoxin works by increasing the force of heart contractions, which can be helpful in treating heart failure. But in high doses, it can cause arrhythmias and other dangerous heart problems.
So it's a powerful drug that needs to be used with extreme caution.
Absolutely. And digitoxin poisoning can be fatal, so it's important to monitor patients carefully and adjust doses accordingly.
It's a good reminder that even natural remedies can have serious side effects.
Indeed. And now let's move on to another botanical toxin that's known for its potency, aconitine.
Aconitine, that one sounds pretty ominous. What's the source of this toxin?
Aconitine is a highly toxic alkaloid found in plants of the Aconitum genus, commonly known as monkshood or wolfsbane. These plants have a long history of use in traditional medicine, but they're also infamous for their toxicity.
So it's another example of a plant that walks a fine line between healing and harm.
Exactly. Aconitine is a potent neurotoxin and cardiotoxin, meaning that it can affect both the nervous system and the heart.
What kind of effects does it have?
Aconitine poisoning can cause a range of symptoms, including tingling sensations, numbness, muscle weakness, paralysis, arrhythmias, and even cardiac arrest.
So it's a pretty dangerous substance.
It is. Even a small amount of aconitine can be lethal. And because it can be absorbed through the skin, handling these plants can be risky.
It sounds like something out of a Sherlock Holmes novel.
You're not wrong. Aconitine has been used in both traditional medicine and as a poison throughout history, and its potent effects have made it a subject of fascination and fear.
It's a good reminder that even seemingly harmless plants can harbor dangerous toxins.
Absolutely. And it underscores the importance of being aware of the potential hazards lurking in the natural world.
Okay, I'm ready for the last botanical toxin on our list. What else have you got?
Let's talk about reserpine.
Reserpine. That one sounds familiar. Isn't it used to treat high blood pressure?
You're right. Reserpine is an indole alkaloid derived from the Rauwolfia serpentina plant. It's been used for centuries in traditional Indian medicine to treat a variety of ailments, including high blood pressure, anxiety, and insomnia.
So it's another example of how traditional knowledge has informed modern medicine.
Absolutely. And reserpine was one of the first effective drugs for treating high blood pressure, paving the way for the development of other antihypertensive medications.
It's a remarkable story of how nature can provide solutions to chronic health problems.
Indeed. But reserpine, like many other botanical toxins, has a dark side. It can cause a range of side effects, including drowsiness, depression, and even Parkinsonian symptoms.
So it's another case of a drug that needs to be used with caution.
Exactly. And reserpine's use has declined in recent years due to the availability of newer, safer antihypertensive medications.
It's a reminder that even effective drugs can be superseded by better alternatives as science advances.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of scientific progress. We're constantly learning more about the natural world and how to harness its power for good.
This has been an incredible deep dive into the world of natural toxins.
It's been a fascinating journey through nature's chemical arsenal.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How these toxins can be so dangerous, yet they're also helping us unlock these secrets about how our bodies work, these complicated processes.
Yeah, like a double-edged sword. Capable of harm, but also shedding light on, the pathways of life.
Exactly. And we've learned about so many in this deep dive. from botulinum toxin, which can both paralyze and get rid of wrinkles, to ricin, which could be a bioweapon, but also maybe help fight cancer.
And then there's strychnine, which causes those horrible convulsions but is used to study nerves. And the toxins from cone snail venom, which are being researched for treating neurological problems.
Oh, and how could we forget tetrodotoxin? Makes fugu a risky dish, but also gives us insights into how nerves signal. It's been quite a journey.
A whirlwind tour of nature's chemical arsenal, for sure, showing us how diverse and complex these molecules can be.
It's mind-blowing to think about, for every toxin we've talked about, there are probably so many more out there just waiting to be
Well,
discovered.
that's the beauty of science, right? There's always something new to find, to understand, and maybe even use to, make things better.
So as we wrap up this incredible deep dive, what's one thing you'd want to leave our listeners with?
I'd say always remember that nature is incredibly powerful. It can be beautiful, but it can also be dangerous. As we keep exploring, we need to do it with respect and a bit of caution. That balance is what keeps life going.
That's a really important message. Thanks for joining us on this exploration into the fascinating world of natural toxins.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.